Of the world. This is Ashley Campbell with Daily Encouragement. It's Friday. It's Food for Thought Friday. I was making sure I turned my mic on, you guys. So, I hope you guys had a great Thanksgiving. Happy Thanksgiving, since I did not say it to you guys yesterday. But, well, I did. I wrote out a post. But anyway, I want to talk to you guys today about how is the gospel supposed to impact our real life, and how do we see? What did you go out to see? How good are you guys at checking your expectations, or the way you are perceiving things? So let's get into that today. Before we get into it, I will be mailing off books this afternoon. I sold 4 copies since Wednesday night. I've got 5 signed copies left. I'm running a special right now, 25% off my book. Okay, if you use the promo code FRIENDS25, you have to use the signed copy link. That's the only way you're going to get the 25% discount. This does not work for Amazon. It doesn't work for Barnes & Noble, Walmart, any of those other platforms that are selling my book. This deal is only for those who want to purchase a signed copy directly from me. You'll get 25% off, but you have to put the promo code in or it will not work, you guys, okay? So I got 5 left. If you want to get a signed copy, today's the day. The sale ends 11:59 tonight, you guys. So make sure you get your orders in this afternoon. As soon as I'm done with this video, I'm going to go write out the envelopes and I'm going to the post office. So if you want one mailed to you this morning, make the payment and we'll make it happen, Kevin. All right. So you guys, I was just reading through Matthew 11 this morning. I don't have a ton of notes. I just want to share with you guys some things that stuck out to me as I was reading this morning. So this is Matthew 11. Check this out. It says, now it came to pass when Jesus finished commanding his 12 disciples that he departed from there to teach and preach in their cities. And when John, which is his cousin, had heard in prison about the works of Christ, he sent 2 of his disciples and said to him, are you the coming one, or do we look for another? Jesus answered and said to them, go and tell John the things which you hear and see. The blind see and the lame walk. The lepers are cleansed and the deaf hear. The dead are raised up, and the poor have the gospel preached to them. And blessed is he who is not offended because of me. Well, here's the interesting thing. Did John the Baptist not know that Jesus was the Christ? Of course he did, right? Do you guys remember when John's like, oh, you don't have to be baptized by me? And Jesus like, yes, we must fulfill all righteousness. So he was baptized by John. He saw the Spirit descend on Jesus like a dove. He saw the Spirit come upon him. So John the Baptist knew these things, but he's sitting in prison. I'm sure he probably had the expectation that his cousin probably could have got him out or something could have happened, right? I mean, seriously. When your cousin is the God in the flesh, and here you are rotting in a jail cell, I mean, you'd probably be a little offended, right? You guys ever get offended by people? You have expectations of them because they have certain titles. And it's funny because I've had people, just the other day, actually, somebody, what did she say to me? She's like, she didn't ask me if I had a ministry, but she was like, oh, so you're like a preacher or something. I said, I don't like titles. I don't like labels, because as soon as you have that, people have expectations of you. I said, I am just a person that shows up on social media and is just sharing with other people the things that I'm reading and think about. That's it. And that is something anybody can do. You don't have to go to Bible school, or you don't have to get permission from anybody. Your life is your authority. Anybody could read the Bible and talk to other people about what they're reading and what they're thinking. I really hope more and more people would do that, right? Get together with other people that want to grow in Christ and are trying to live this thing out. Read it and share with each other how you're learning and growing. You know, when I was in my small group, one of the questions that they always asked every week was, okay, Ashley, what's God doing in your life? And that was so powerful. Hey, good morning, Gary. I got your book order yesterday, so the book is going to be on its way. And I do send everybody their tracking receipts. I can email it to you. I usually send them through Messenger, but everyone's getting their books today. So yeah, hi, Gary, and thank you for your order. So anyway, the point is anybody can do it, right? If you're following Christ, it's actually expected of you by God. He wants to reveal himself to you. But if you're not digging in, you're not asking questions, then, you're not going to get the insight. You're not going to get the understanding. What are you going to give to the world? Right. And so anyway, let's go back to that. I'm sure John was offended that his cousin had the power and the authority to get him out of prison. And he's sitting here rotten. So that's why he sends his 2 disciples. Should we look for another? So then it's funny. So then it goes on. And as they departed, okay, hold on. Before we get into that, It says the dead are raised and the poor have the gospel preached to them. You know what's funny? I don't think we understand the power of the gospel. If you go back up to what Jesus said, the blind see and the lame walk. Was he not literally healing people? People that could not walk were literally physically getting up and walking. All right. People that could not see, that were literally blind. Jesus rubbed stuff on their eyes and they could see. Okay. The lepers are cleansed. People literally had leprosy. They were healed. All right. And the deaf hear. This is not just like some, what would you say? Fairy tale crap that you read and you're like, oh yeah, that's cool. Or maybe it has a different meaning. Have you guys ever been around people that are so heavenly minded? They're no earthly good. Everything is over spiritualized to the point to where it's not even applicable. It's so way off here. They totally overlook it or read into it too deep. No, this is actual, just literal right off the top. All right. The blind see, the lame walk, the lepers are cleansed, the deaf hear, the dead are raised. Did Jesus Christ not literally raise a person who was dead? Lazarus, right? This was real stuff that happened. This isn't just, oh, it's going to happen or it might have happened that way, or I don't really know if that did happen. Does it mean something else? No, it means exactly what it says. And that's the reason a lot of Christians stumble. They don't literally take God at his word. If he said, don't worry about your life, well, you'll eat, drink, or wear, you think that is, I don't know about that. Here's the thing. Human logic kicks in, right? And I get it. We have a responsibility as adults to make decisions for our life. I understand that 100%. But have you ever realized your own limitations and your own ability sometimes to do the things that you know you need to do? That's the point. All right? When your back's against the wall, where are you going to go? I mean, unless you got all your crap together and, you've got everything figured out. I always say it. If you were really knew everything, and if you knew everything, you would be doing what you want to be doing with your life. Why would you not? I mean, isn't that kind of retarded? Seriously? So the point is we have to recognize our limitations and let God provide in those areas that we lack. That is why God gives grace to the humble. We're not saying be completely mindless, because that's not what God requires. It says we're supposed to rule and subdue. We have decisions that have to be made. We reap what we sow, right? But there will be times where it's like you're doing the best you can and you're like, Lord, I don't know what to do, right? And sometimes, you have to start engaging your heart and what you want with God, right? Let's just say you're working a job, your ends are meeting, but they're not. It's not ideal. Or maybe you're working, but it's not the job you want to be at. Or maybe you're a woman that has a bunch of kids, right? I'm speaking from example. I got 7 children. And there was a time where it was like, I was working, but I wanted to be home with them, right? So it's like, I had to start asking God for those things also, not just like, Lord, help me pay my bills, but Lord, I want to be with my kids. I had to start acknowledging the desires that I had in my heart. I wanted to be with them, right? I knew it was going to require us living off of one income, right? And asking God to help me with those things I wanted to do. How many of you also, let's just say you want to buy a house. How many of you are renting out there? Is it not expensive to rent? I mean, it's crazy, you guys. Everybody, it's like even out here in Tennessee, in West Tennessee, I hear some of the rent out here is like $1,300 a month. I can't even imagine what it is in Washington State anymore. That's crazy. $1,500 a month, $1,300 a month for an apartment. What the heck? So the point is are you realizing sometimes that the life you have is not really what you want? Why do we think God doesn't want to give us a life that we want? He's come to give us life that we would have it abundantly, right? So why don't you start asking him? That's the point. Lord, you know what? I'm really getting sick of having to pay $1,500 a month for rent. I'm sure, Lord, there's a better investment. Lord, help me to figure out how to buy a house, right? Seriously, get practical with God, And so it's interesting how he says, and the poor have the gospel preached to them. What the heck does that mean? Everything else around that was literal. Why is that significant? Because poor people know their limitations. They're like, I don't have everything, right? It's like, I know that I need things, okay? And so the point is what is the gospel? What does it mean, right? The gospel is salvation, right? We say it all the time. We always make it pertaining to Jesus Christ forgiving us of our sins. Yes, duh. Why is that important? Because the decisions, the way that you used to make decisions and live your life is no longer counted against you anymore. Those old filters you had in your mind, those old ways of seeing things and doing things are no longer wreaking havoc on your life, because there was a certain way that you lived your life up until you came to Christ, right? And if you were producing the life you wanted, you'd already be doing it, right? For me, I wasn't, not at all, not one bit, So anyway, the point is yes, that's the function of it, but it's greater than that, because now God's going to give you an opportunity to think about things differently, learn and grow, right? A lot of times the reasons people don't step out and do anything different is because they're still bound to their past and how they used to behave and what they used to do. Well, God doesn't operate like that with you anymore. He's like, he sees you as his child, the full potential that you have, right? That's how God sees us. But we don't always see ourselves in the fullness of how God sees us. Okay, we limit ourselves by how we think about ourselves sometimes. How many Christians have I run into still? I'm just a sinner saved by grace. Duh. Okay, now what? How has Jesus Christ, because you were that, how is the application of his blood and his word transformed your life? Because even when Paul was talking to the church, he didn't call them sinners, he called them saints, right? So it's like you have to learn to get a completely different identity in your life, right? And say, okay, Lord, you've really truly given me a new slate, right? I mean, there's character traits that God wants to build into you more, right? Who can't be more compassionate and kind and grow and develop, right? Be more honest. I mean, you know what I'm saying? And not just honest with other people, but honest with yourself, right? Honest about what you need, what you want to do with your life. There was a time where I realized that I was holding myself back as a person, right? Because the truth is, I was like, Lord, I want to make money. I want to be able to provide experiences for my family and for my kids and, do more, right? I got 7 children, right? I want to be able to do more stuff with them. Well, the reason I wasn't acknowledging that was because the judgment in the Christian community if Christians have money. Seriously. People have not right now, honey. You can have that later tonight, okay? My youngest daughter just came in here. We bought them like sparkling cider for Thanksgiving. And they had 2 bottles of it last night. And she wants to come in here and have some. It's like, not right now. But anyway, being honest with what you want. And I think that's the reason why a lot of people don't see the goodness of God, because you deny the good that's in your heart. Where do we get all these judgments from, right? It's usually from other people. It's usually what people think, right? I've seen an attitude that if you're a Christian, you should do everything for free, right? Oh yeah, you should do it for free. Like there's some weird entitlement that someone else's time and the things that they've learned should now just, what is it? It's like they think that it's owed to them. Why do you think Jesus said, what's that? It's in Matthew 7. He talks about being careful about who you give your pearls to. He says, do not give what is holy to the dogs, nor cast your pearls before swine, lest they trample them under your feet and turn and tear you to pieces. What does that mean? Think about pearls. Jesus always, and even the Bible, all throughout, pearls are seen as wisdom. I got to read this to you guys. I've been meaning to share this with you guys for a while. So I wrote this down years ago. Check this out. So we're talking about pearls, right? Pearls of wisdom. Jesus says, don't throw your pearls to pigs. But I want you to hear this real quick. It says the oyster completely and totally rejects the particle of sand. However, the sand holds on. Throughout the oyster's best efforts, it stubbornly refuses to budge. Eventually, that grain of sand develops into a beautiful pearl. Its new value came as a result of being absolutely rejected. So how do you get a pearl? The sand gets into the oyster. The oyster does everything it can to reject it. But that same thing it tried to reject brought the greatest worth into its life, right? Now people are looking for pearls because they're worth money. So that is really what happens inside of us. God gives us wisdom. He gives us insight. The things that were used in our life that try to destroy us, right? The rejection that we all will face. And did you guys watch the video that, oh no, I didn't do a video on this. It was a podcast. Oh man, you guys got to listen to this. It's going to be coming out in December, but I talked about that whole dynamic. So I'm going to stop right there. Hopefully, when is it released? I think December 27th or something. But I talked about when Jesus said, unless you love me more than your father, mother, sister, brother. And then he says you got to take up your cross. And then I talked about the 2 instances where the Lord says, take up your cross and follow me. What does it really mean, right? To take up your cross. You guys, man, you guys got to listen to that podcast. It was so good. So, and anyway, let's go back to what we were talking about here. So much we were talking about, you guys. Okay, Matthew 11. All right, so the poor, right? The gospel being preached to the poor. So the gospel is actually literally supposed to do something for you. Oh, that's what we were talking about, pearls of wisdom. There is a cultivation period that we go through. Not everyone's going to value the insight and the understanding that you have that's been cultivated in your life as a result of the things that you've been through. Some people don't care about it, right? They'll try to tear you to pieces. They'll try to tell you that what you're saying is wrong and try to reject you and this or that. You got to be careful. Here's the thing about social media, though. You don't know if you're talking to pigs or not. Straight up. I don't know anybody on here. I've never met you in person, right? Now, I can tell by how you guys talk to me, right? How you share my content, that kind of thing. But the truth is, and I don't care if you're up here talking about what God's doing in your life or if you're just on social media engaging with people. You don't know who you're talking to. You're talking to pigs or what? We don't know. Because social media, it's like, everyone's behind a camera or behind a picture and they're typing things up. And some people aren't as transparent and honest about things on social media as they are in real life. So you just don't know. And that's the thing. That's the risk that you take if you're going to be on social media, is you don't know if you're casting your pearls before swine, And so anyway, I could do a whole nother conversation on Matthew 7, but we're not going to do that right now. I really want to continue this on because there's some things that I think are a little more pertaining. So check this out. So Jesus tells that to John's disciples, and then it goes on. As they departed, Jesus began to say to the multitudes concerning John, what did you go out into the wilderness to see? So people were going out to see John the Baptist. He's like, what did you go out to see? A reed shaken by the wind? Did you go out to watch nature? Did you go out to just watch the trees blow in the wind? He's like, a reed shaken by the wind? But what did you go to see? He's like, no, I know you didn't go to see that. He goes, a man clothed in soft garments? He goes, indeed, those who wear soft clothing are in king's houses. He goes, but what did you go out to see? A prophet? Yes. He goes, I know the motivation of why you went out there to go see John the Baptist, right? What were you going out there to see? A dude in soft clothes? Nah, he wouldn't be there. The trees blown in the wind? No. He's like, a prophet. Yes, you're right. You went out there because you knew that John was a prophet. He goes, yes, I say to you, and more than that, a prophet, for this is he of whom it was written, behold, I send my messenger before your face, who will prepare your way before you. Assuredly, I say to you, among those born of women, there has not risen one greater than John the Baptist, but he who is least in the kingdom of heaven is greater than he. And from the days of John the Baptist until now, the kingdom of heaven suffers violence, and the violent take it by force. For all the prophets and the law prophesied until John. And if you are willing to receive it, he is Elijah who is to come. He who has ears to hear, let him hear. Willing to receive it. He's like, all right, y'all went out there for the right reasons. He was a prophet, but now I got to give you something else that you have to be willing to accept, right? You have to be, did you know you have to be willing to allow your perception to be changed? You have to open yourself up to different ways of thinking. The Lord's like, okay, you're right. Now I got something else for you to accept, right? But check this out. Here's the other side of the coin. He goes, but to what shall I liken this generation? It is like children sitting in the marketplaces and calling to their companions and saying, we played the flute for you, and you did not dance. We mourned to you, and you did not lament. Have you ever been around somebody? You did something with the expectation that there would be a certain result. And guess what? It didn't happen. How many of you are, number one, are really good about communicating your expectations in relationships with people, talking to people? Or do you have an expectation without telling them? Right? We played the flute for you and you didn't dance. We played the flute. We were expecting you to dance and do this. Didn't happen. Okay. We mourned to you and you did not lament. Then it says, for John came neither eating nor drinking, and they say he has a demon. Okay. So what was the expectation before? If you don't eat and you don't drink, right? He's not eating, he's not drinking. That will prove that he's a man of God. Well, guess what they still said about him? He has a demon. Okay. What's the next thing? It says the Son of Man came eating and drinking. And they say, look, a glutton and a wine bibber, right? So obviously Jesus was drinking wine, right? That's, I could really, offend a lot of people right now. We're not talking about that. The point is Jesus came doing these things. The Son of Man came eating and drinking, and they say, look, a glutton and a wine bibbler, a friend of tax collectors and sinners. The point is, and then it says, but wisdom is justified by her children. The point is both John the Baptist and Jesus Christ were doing all the things in the eyes of men that you think, okay, if I do this, then maybe they'll get it. Maybe they're going to come to the conclusions that I'm hoping they're going to come to. Didn't work that way. They still accused, both of them. Oh, he has a demon. John the Baptist has a demon. Oh, the Son of Man. He's a friend of sinners. He's this, he's that. But that's why Jesus said wisdom is produced by its children. What does that mean? Jesus is saying, look at the results of my life. Look at what's being produced as a result of the things that I'm saying and doing. That's what he said. That's what he even said to the Pharisees all the time. He goes, fine. If you're not going to listen to what I'm telling you, can you at least look at the results themselves, right? People are being healed. Good things are happening. So that is what we got to start doing. That is why Jesus said, you'll know a tree by its fruit. Who picks fruit? Who picks grapes from thorn bushes? And I used to think about that. Like, what does that mean? Right? I had been in relationships with other Christians who would tell me to look for their fruit, but God, they were the most difficult people I had ever approached. And I realized, you know what that looks like? People who are unapproachable are people who have thorns, right? They don't have good fruit. You can't access their life. You're trying to get something from it, and they're just like, they're very sharp, and they're very cut off, and they're very bitter. That's not what God expects, right? Our lives, it says that we are supposed to produce fruit, and that fruit is going to be for other people, right? To benefit from. The fruit you produce, the things you produce in your life should be good for you and good for other people, right? It's the same concept with farming. A farmer is going to go out and plant a field, and he's going to make food for himself that's going to be good for him and his family, and food that he can sell that other people can get, right? Your life is the same kind of way, right? You should be producing good things in your life that will be good for you and good for other people. And then people can access it. How do they do that? You have a process or a way of understanding about something that you can give to them that will benefit their life, right? And that's where us acknowledging the holes of shame in our life, the things that we struggled with, asking God to give us insight, understanding, in the context of how those injuries were formed, the mindsets that were developed as a result of those things, the new ways of unlearning and learning that you had to undergo to produce a better result, right? That is fruit, okay? I understand there's fruit of love, joy, peace, patience, goodness, faithfulness, self-control, but that's a state of being. There's also going to be results that are going to be evident, right? That's why Jesus said, the dead are raised, the blind see. These things are happening as a result of me being here, right? That's what he's telling John's disciples. These things are happening, but people are still coming to the conclusions that are not the reality of the situation. And we can do that at times too, right? And that's why when I was thinking about this morning, I was doing my workout. I was like, Lord, help us to, because obviously John the Baptist is offended, right? When he was in prison, thinking that, hey, can't my cousin get me out of here? He's got all this power, but he's still sitting there rotting. So he's feeling frustrated. It's like, Lord, help us to he's like, blessed is he who is not offended by me. It's like, Lord, help us not to be offended with you at times. Help us to really see what you're doing in our life, asking him the question, like, Lord, what are you teaching me in my life right now? What do I really need to be seeing and grasping? Because I was talking to my husband about this. It's like, you can be listening to somebody, you can hear what they're saying, but it can sound like want to you, right? You're hearing their voice, but you're not comprehending what they're saying. Or you can be listening to what they're saying and still not understanding what they're saying, right? And how do you usually know? How does that come about? Conflict, right? All of a sudden you're talking to somebody and then you're like getting defensive or they're getting defensive and you guys are sitting there butting heads. It's because there was a point of miscommunication, right? One person said something, but it's not necessarily what they meant. Not very many people are courageous enough to actually say what they mean because it's vulnerable, right? If you say what you mean, people know where you stand. Well, if you're worried about getting rejected by people, you're not going to do that, right? You're going to worry more about your connection, which is important. Connections are important, but at the expense of what? Our authenticity, who we are as people, what we really think about things, right? I mean, there's a way that you see life and it's valid, right? I mean, God created all of us for a different purpose and a different function. All right. Just because the heart doesn't give, oxygen or process the food, does that make it any less valuable? No, it has its own job, right? It's like just because, and that's the thing for because we're not comfortable in, knowing who we are and what our function is, we want everything to be the same so we can feel secure. And it's like, that's not the way the world works. That's not the way God works. Everything has different, has its own purpose and function. Right. And so we just have to get comfortable in figuring what that is. And so the point is I was just realizing that number one, the poor have the gospel preached to them. The gospel in God and Jesus' mind is literally supposed to be transforming your life. Salvation, not just him saving you from your sins. Duh. Okay. Move forward now. What other areas of your life do you need salvation? Any means of deliverance from danger, evil, or ruin? Where in your life do you perceive danger, evil, or ruin right now? Could it be your finances? Could it be your relationships? Could it be your health? Insert something if it's there. Anything that comes to your mind, right? And pertaining to salvation. Now you ask God to help you with that. Lord, help me to figure this out, right? How do I create better relationships? How do I manage my money better? What's the process to go about buying a house or doing the things that I want to do? And maybe I want to start a business. How do you do that? You have to start identifying areas in your life where you need the salvation he's come to give in practical ways. That's exactly what Jesus Christ did. People being healed was practical, right? I mean, can you imagine sitting on the side of the road somewhere for 38 years or whatever because you physically can't get up and walk? I mean, that guy who was healed, who sat at the pool for 38 years, his life completely changed once he could get up and walk, right? But you have to sit there at the mercy of people's charity your whole life, right? And so, but God healed him. He was like, hey, get up and walk. And then he had to completely unlearn a new way. I mean, I'm sure he was used to sitting there begging for 38 years. Now he's got to go get a job and he's got to, go live his life. He's got to go find another place to lay his head except for the side of the road, right? So it's like we have to realize that that's the God that we serve. People were hungry. What did he do? God fed them, right? And it's funny because that story when he fed, I think it's in John, he fed 5,000, then he fed another group and he multiplied the food. And then those same people who just experienced being fed, not all of them obviously brought food because if that was the case, why did the Lord have to bless it all? Some people just ain't prepared, okay? And God knows that, but he still took care of them. And then they were like, well, wait a minute. Are you really who you say you are? It's like, are you serious? You did not bring any food. These couple people donated what they had so you could eat because you didn't come prepared. You didn't pack a sandwich on your walk. You know what I'm saying? And now that somebody else gave up what they had, he multiplied it. And now you're sitting here questioning whether he's got the authority or not, whether he's Christ. Humble thyself. You didn't even have anything to begin with. So that's the point. That is why the gospel is preached to the poor, because poor people know their limits and then they can ask God to fill in the gaps. Help us out, Lord, right? In the context of whatever area they perceive they need salvation. So, and then, the whole thing about, what did you go out to see? What are you expecting? What did you go out to see? And asking God to help you see rightly in your life, right? Because you might not be. A lot of people, how do you know that you need to change your mind about God? Well, is what you believe about him keeping him from you or you from him? Do you feel burdened in your relationship with God? Are you like, it doesn't really do anything, right? Like, what's the point of serving God? You ever thought that? Well, you might not be courageous enough to actually say it, but you thought it, right? You might feel burdened or think, what's the point? Like, what is this supposed to be doing for me? Because usually the only message you hear in church is stop sinning. Well, okay, life is not just about stopping sinning. It's about living too, making decisions, creating new patterns in your life. Here's the thing, people will stop sinning once they know what to do. Telling people what to do is different than telling them what not to do. It's like kids. If you constantly say, don't do this, don't do that, they're like, well, what can I do? What do you expect from me? Where do you want me to go? How do you want me to hold this? Right? That is a different paradigm. That's a different way of communicating. And that's what people are looking for. Okay, cool. I'm not going to sin anymore, but how should I live? And that's why it's important for you to humble yourself and figure out, because here's the thing. You can't expect a pastor or somebody to sit up there and tell you what to do and how to live your life. You just have to realize what you need and acknowledge it, whether people judge it or not, right? There's a lot of, like I said, garbage in the, Christian culture in terms of like what you can do and can't do, what you can ask God for and what you can't ask God for. Have you ever heard people say that? Like, if I say you can ask the Lord for anything, people are already thinking, well, are you sure? Like, you got to be careful what you ask God for. You got to make sure it's in His will. Well, duh. I already talked to you guys about this. Here's the thing. I remember when I was getting ready to move out here to Tennessee and I was asking for the house that I'm in right now. Before I even got it, I was nervous to ask for it because I didn't want to be disappointed, right? But things were different this time, different context, you guys. I've been following the Lord for like 17 years. So there's a lot of history here. And I remember I said, Lord, why can we ask you for anything? I was frustrated by the question because He said it. Jesus said, if you love me, keep my words and ask me for anything, it'll be granted to you. And I'm like, are you sure? Because I've asked you for things before and it didn't work out. And I was just being 100% honest. Like, I had to get that off my chest. And then all of a sudden this thought hit me and was like, Ashley, I said, Lord, why can I ask you for anything? And then the thought hit me. It was like, Ashley, He brought my mind to marriage. He said, it's about reciprocation. So then I thought about it and I was like, I've been with my husband. It'll be 23 years in February. And because we keep each other's words, we're faithful to each other, the vows that we made, because we keep those things, I can ask Him for whatever I want. And I would never ask Him for anything out of the bounds of the commitment I made to Him. I would never ask my husband, hey, can I go sleep with the dude down the street? Duh. Right? That's the point. If you love God and you're like, okay, Lord, I do want to keep your words, whatever that's going to look like, right? For you, how can I say this? The way that people keep God's words is the way that they keep God's words. You have to get comfortable with you figuring that out in your own life and what that's going to look like. It's kind of like this. When we grow up, when we're children, we do everything our parents tell us to do, right? We live life their way for a time. There's like a form of safety that's there, and that's okay. But then guess what happens? We become teenagers and we start looking at things and thinking about things and how we want to, maybe the different jobs we want to have or the places we want to go, right? Some parents try to literally mold their children into them, right? That's not the way it works though, right? God's given them different desires, different skill sets, different things that they want to create and do. And so then as you get older and you start realizing those things about yourself, you're not going to have the same job your parents had or have the same house or the same mindset or anything, right? Because I say it all the time. Did you know that children are the reset button on humanity? Did you know that whatever crappy results that you grew up with and the ways of being that you had and the limitations, like your kids can go above that, right? Like we're limited, you guys. And so the point is having children, our children are not going to be replicas of us per se, not the exact same things. That doesn't mean that that doesn't mean they can't have common character, right? Everyone should have character, good character, bad character, you choose, right? As parents, you have certain character traits. Your children are going to have certain character traits. Your kids are going to have certain values. You have certain values, right? You might have common values, and that's important, right? We need to be around people that, value, like I value truth, right? So I want to be around people that want to tell the truth, right? That tell the truth about who they are and what they want to do and, what they think about things. Like that's important to me, right? Because truth is reality and God uses reality to help us make decisions. So like truth is my number one value right there, and if you lie to me, I get pissed. So I value honesty, right? Truth and honesty are huge. And freedom, it's important for me to be able to make my own, well, I guess that would fall underneath autonomy, right? Your ability to think and do for yourself as an individual, right? And not be controlled by other people and what they think you should do and this or that, because not everybody knows what you've been through and why you do what you do. Did you know that people do things not for the reasons that you think they do? I mean, especially if you've never even asked them the question, right? A lot of people operate in their assumptions and not in truth. Assumption is you think you know. Truth is asking and getting those things established. Those are two different ways of living. And a lot of people don't do that because it's vulnerable. If you ask somebody why they're doing what they're doing, and some people don't like being asked, right? But truth can be questioned. It's important, especially in your close relationships. You should be asking questions. Why do you think people get disappointed with each other? Because they make too many assumptions, right? They think they know. And then all of a sudden it's like, no, you really didn't know until you ask the question. You can only make decisions, good decisions based upon reality. Assumptions are not reality. That's what you think. But if you don't test it and ask, you don't know. All right. So anyway, you guys, that is all I have for you guys today. I just wanted to share that with you. The gospel is preached to the poor. The gospel is supposed to do something for you today. And just make sure that you're checking how you're seeing things, right? I mean, like Jesus said, oh, we played the flute for you. You didn't dance. You might do things expecting someone to respond in a certain kind of way. But if you're not communicating those expectations, then you're setting yourself up for massive disappointment. So the best thing to do is to ask, right? I mean, isn't that what God says all the time? Ask and it will be given to you. Seek and you will find. Knock and the door will be opened. Right? So, and that's the other thing too. That's how we make decisions. You can only make good decisions based upon reality. Some people don't want to deal with reality. That's why they feel confused all the time. Because sometimes reality is hard, right? Sometimes it's like what you thought it was is not what it is. And then you have to change your course. Well, some people don't like that because now their safety net has been pulled out from underneath of them. Well, the safest way to live your life is to establish the truth. If you want to live in safety, you live in truth. If you want to, think that you're safe because you don't have any conflict, are you kidding me? Just wait until you ask somebody what you think they mean, right? So that's important. You can save yourself a lot of heartache by asking up front. Why would you try to keep the peace? You know how people do that? Just keep the peace. And then all of a sudden it all comes to a head. And then they're like, you could have prevented that. The biggest way to prevent, things unintentional like that is to stop blowing it off and ask what needs to be asked. And then you can ask God to help you deal with that situation. That's where God works. He works in the reality of it, not in what you think it should be or what you want it to be, what it is. And here's the thing. You can't control how other people perceive you. That is their responsibility. Your responsibility is just to communicate what you think, right? How you feel about something. What are your thoughts? What are your values? What are your priorities, right? That's your responsibility. How people respond to that is on them. And that's the quickest way to figure out who's in your court and who's not. If you don't want to be betrayed by people, tell people the truth, right? If you want to have good relationships with people, tell them the truth. And a lot of people are like, oh, but sometimes, people worry about hurting other people. Well, you know how you can hurt people sometimes? Talking behind their back. Talking about, well, they always do this, but you're afraid to tell them. Do you know that's how factions and cancer gets created in the body of Christ? Everybody's so busy talking about the problem and not talking about it with the person that they need to talk about it with. Right? So it's like, just be honest. God gives grace to the humble. God is the spirit of truth. There's only two spirits in this world, the spirit of lies and the spirit of truth. If you have the Holy Spirit, you have the spirit of truth in you, right? And God expects us to operate in the spirit of truth, looking at reality, even when it sucks, even when it's hard, right? Get out of our delusions at times, like the Pharisees, right? John came either eating or drinking. They said he has a demon. Well, how the heck did they come to those conclusions? Their expectations. Was that true though? Did John the Baptist have a demon just because they said that? No. The way they perceive things, right? And you can't control that. So anyway, you guys, I'm going to get off here. I hope you guys got some value out of it. Frank, I'm mailing your book today too, man. So I got 4 books to mail. Thank you guys for your support. Like I said, you have to use the promo code. And the thing about it on the phone, like when I set this up, I was like, where is it on here? But it says add promo on your phone. It doesn't stand out too well. So you can easily overlook it. So I've got 5 copies left. If you want one, add promo, Friends25. It takes 25% off. And I think it's like $23.03 instead of $30.01 or something like that. And that includes shipping and all that kind of stuff. Okay. Shipping is like $4.65. All right. So anyway, you guys, I hope you guys have a wonderful weekend. I thank you guys for joining me. Like and share the video if this was helpful, you guys. Yeah, other than that, I'm getting off here. Y'all have a great day, and I will be back next week.